Welcome to A Magical Life, Health, Wealth and Weight Loss. I'm your host, Magic Barclay, lead practitioner at Holistic Natural Health Australia and #1 bestselling author. In this podcast, I aim to give you practical tips on how to accelerate and sustain your health, increase your financial, spiritual and emotional wealth, and to look at something that haunts many of us needlessly, weight loss. In some episodes, I'll have guests available to give you even more tips, but in others, the floor is yours. Drop us a line at A Magical Life Podcast on Facebook and let me know what you would like to know more about. Now, sit back and enjoy, because it is time for you to create and truly discover a magical life. Welcome back to A Magical Life. I'm your host, Magic Barclay, and I'm joined today by Avital Miller. Avital is a best-selling author of the books Healing, Happens and Practice, and she inspires people to experience boundless energy, absolute happiness, and true success in order to live the best life possible. For over 15 years, Avital has been serving thousands of people worldwide as an award-winning international keynote speaker, a neuro-linguistic programming practitioner, healing breakthrough facilitator, and a global dancer. We'll ask her more about that in a moment. Her leadership background includes working as a program manager at Microsoft, lead coach for Success Resources America, sales and marketing director for Crystal Clarity Publishers, yoga and fitness teacher, trainer, fitness director, and ordained minister. Yes, folks, this lady has done it all and she's pretty amazing. Her articles have been published in Fitness Professional Online, 30 Seconds, Sacred Dance Guild, and much more. I could go on forever about how fantastic Avital is, but I'm just going to introduce her. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here.
Great to have you here. Now, tell us, global dancer. What is a global dancer?
It's a term I made up. But I should tell you a funny story later too of making up our titles. But here's the deal. I love dance. Loved it my whole life. And at one point I was like, I want to learn the dances around the world. So I'll travel the world and I'll learn all the dances. And then when I was a fitness director, I started a class called Dance Diversified. And every 1 to 2 months, I changed the teacher. And I brought in all the dances around the world. And I didn't have to go anywhere to learn the dances around the world. However, every time I travel, I end up somehow in a dance studio and often on a stage without knowing that was going to happen before the trip. So there I am in front of thousands of people, nationally televised at the Miss South India pageant. I've performed around the world. So I love doing the dances of the world and I love sharing it around the world.
That's fantastic. And listeners, if you can hear Avital's giggles and the joy when she talks, that's a life goal there, to be as happy as you are. That's fantastic.
Oh, yes. Well, I've definitely done my work to get to this place of joy. And I feel it's a beautiful place to be. And I wish it upon everyone. And it's not 100% game. First of all, there's an appreciation for all the other flavors and colors of emotions that come up. But there's awareness that comes with them as well. And when you tend to be in the higher states of joy more frequently, it's also easier to notice when you're not and what you have to work on so you can get back to that joy state.
I love that. Now, Avital, I always ask my guests the same 3 questions. And I'm continually amazed with the variety of answers and the tangents that these questions take us on. So Let's get started. So the first one is, what can your expertise do to accelerate health? Now, when we're talking health, it's not just the physical, but it's the emotional, the spiritual, the whole spectrum of health.
Mm-hmm. My expertise probably comes out in a number of ways. And I feel like you actually touched on the most impactful level of expertise, which is the joy. And it's creating experiences that help people tap into that joy. You know, my background, very specifically, I've studied about health because I had my own health issues, being diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder called Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism. And then just told that's it for life, put on a high dosage of medication. And I start doing this research and finding out there's so much more that I could do for the health of my body and to live with this peacefully, kind of like if it's an arranged marriage, how am I going to make the best of this? And I think it's then creating that insight that, oh, there's something more. Oh, there's more potential. So here's your tickets for the greater potential. You mentioned my book, Healing Happens, Stories of Healing Against All Odds. I mean, my story with these types of conditions, it's kind of like you would just be just uncomfortable for life. But other people were told that they were going to die in a few months or a few hours. But I met them years later. And that's why I put the stories of all these different experts into the book so that we could also get their advice and see what are they seeing repeatedly as a result or in response, just coincidentally with the actions that they're taking for themselves and for their clients. So wisdom and inspiration, when belief is a huge part of healing. And you could definitely get that from my book, from my talks, from my online courses as well, and be able to get those experiences. I do draw from a few other tools. So I've got yoga, meditation, and energy healing, and neuro-linguistic programming. All of those things come into the bucket so that we can really get to a deeper layer of understanding of the whole mind, body, spirit connection of what the challenges are that are coming up, and then live in the best way possible with what we feel like we can control, and then expanding our belief of what we can control.
I think that's really important. So many people just look at, if I take this pill, things will get better because I'll treat the symptoms. And so then that's the whole story. But that's really only just one whisper of the story. It's like a sentence in the first paragraph on the first page. And people so often just stop there and think, well, my doctor said I take this and then this will happen. But they're not looking at all the factors that caused the initial trigger or the initial insult. They're not looking at how their mind is reacting to just take a pill and move on. They're not looking at what they're cutting themselves off from and the repercussions of that.
Yes. Yes. It's a different type of science. It's its very own unique way of dealing with things, the way that modern medicine often works with things. And it has its place, and it's very important. And a lot of times the medicine that we take will also cause other side effects. And it's true, a lot of times it's just helping the symptoms. It's not getting rid of the issue. And not all medicines are that way, and possibly also not in all cases. So everything's going to be unique per individual. There's actually, I'll say this if it's okay, it's a little more esoteric, a little deeper thought here, but it really hit me, especially as vaccines were coming out for the coronavirus. And coincidentally, I listened to a talk from Abraham Hicks that went out years before the coronavirus about vaccines. And it was a doctor, and he's saying, I'm not comfortable, with ever needing to give people vaccines because of the negative repercussions that happen. So the question about vaccines has existed for a long time, not just with the coronavirus. And what Abraham Hicks said, though, well, does everyone have negative repercussions? Is it good for some people? Here's a deeper layer that I feel we need to look at things also. Everything is made of energy. What's energy made of? Vibrational frequency waves. And every single, you could say like bit of energy, speck of energy has its own unique vibrational frequency wave. And every frequency wave is going to create a different type of interaction with a different type of frequency wave. And my recommendation is to focus more on learning to tune in, or if there was a way to measure. But I think if we create a scientific way to measure, we're going to lose our ability to have intuition and tune in. But so focus more and more as you can on gaining intuition, because a lot of intuition fell away when science started. But if you just find the vibrational match for you, that's the key here. And that's going to be the difference also as to when medicine is going to work and when different types of medicines are going to work at different times. It's the same thing with our diet. It's the same thing with how you choose your healing path. Part of the purpose of my book and having so many different healing paths in there is to show that all of them work and all of them don't work. I mean, I only have the stories that worked in my book, but one story, isn't going to work for somebody else in my book. So the focus is also how you're going about that path. And this is also, you're asking about the full body success mastery strategies, because I really wanted to pull out the top techniques that people were using that are relatable, that are easy for us to do, that produce the biggest impact. And coincidentally, that we could do these across the board for anyone and in other areas of life.
I'm glad you mentioned frequencies and energies. Actually, coming up in episode 86, I'm going to discuss that with the listeners in more depth.
Oh.
But everything basically has a frequency. And you were saying about vaccines, and we've spoken about medications, but you've also mentioned about finding joy. Now, they all have their own frequency. And what I find with people who just see a GP or a doctor and go, well, I'm taking this pill, that's it. They're really just, I guess, reducing themselves to the frequency of the medication. And they're often losing sight of how amazing their body is, and that healing doesn't happen for them.
Yes.
Or they become reliant on the medication, or they have side effects, need another medication, because that's the frequency that they're relegated to. So I really would like to just kind of go off on a tangent here. How would you suggest that the listeners find some joy? One of the highest frequencies that you can have. Where do they find that? Because there's so many people these days that just go through life joyless. So how do they find that?
Okay. So I'll talk about joy, and then I'd love to share something else about how we can change the frequency of what we're putting into our body. And so the path for joy is not necessarily a straight path for everyone. And it's not necessarily a snap of the finger. There's still going to be some uniqueness, some individuality. I know for me, I have gained more ability to tap into joy more often and more purely over time. It's been a long time process, but the fun also, and what I see with my clients, they get there faster, right? Because I'm going to help you get there faster. So what are we going to do? The first thing I'm going to recommend is that you do something that raises your energy, because automatically when your energy is raised, you're going to feel more joy. You're going to feel more motivation to do anything. When you do those two things, you start appreciating everything in your life more. I went to Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within. I went to Tony Robbins. I went to Disney World. I came home. I lived in the same home before I left and when I came back. And I came into my home after I came back from the trip. And I was like, oh my God, wow, what a beautiful home. My appreciation for the same thing went up. Paramahansa Yogananda, the yoga guru, said circumstances are neutral. So life doesn't change. We change. And what are you going to do to increase your energy? Let's do something right now. Simple task. Just take a double inhale and tense all of the muscles in your body. Make a really funny face as you do that. Squeeze everything, tense to your max, and then double exhale, release slowly. Whole body can feel alive just from doing that once. Now imagine you do that 2 to 3 times. There's a whole set of exercises from Paramahansa Yogananda called energization exercises. So you do that a few minutes a day, and you're automatically raising your energy every day. The way in which I teach the sitting meditation practice will also help raise the energy. Let me give you another tip, which is really practical. You don't have to learn how to do anything new. Do what you love. Do what you love. Somehow you got to get yourself to just do it. And, and right now we're in a time where we need to figure that out differently than what we have before. I want to say that because whether it's now or in the future, life is always going to change. Life is always going to present challenges. So we have to figure out how to get creative with it. I've been taking dance on Zoom since the pandemic started. One, because I moved further out of the city, so it's a longer drive. But 2, I don't want to take class with a mask on. But I remember just watching in the class that I took last night, and they're just like, because there's a group in the studio, they're all in masks. It's in New York City. This is wonderful. I live in Denver, Colorado. So now it's even better because I get to take from these, the top teachers in New York City, the most exciting city to be in. And it's always been one of my favorite things to do. So it even got better, this way of being creative for these times. But they were like, sometimes the mask just gets to you. And I don't even know what it's like to have to take a full dance class with a mask on because I have not done that. And I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, but you know what? They love dance and they figured out how to make it happen right now. And that's the key, and I'm doing it the way that works for me. I'm taking it from home. Before they had Zoom classes, I opened YouTube videos. So it's, if I didn't have time, do I have 5 minutes? Do I have 5 minutes? And I like, because Tony Robbins kept saying, because he gave us a 10-minute morning routine. He's like, if you don't have 10 minutes a day, you don't have a life. Give yourself a life. You brush your teeth every day, spend 5 minutes after you brush your teeth. Do something you like doing that you can do right there in home.
I love that. And listeners, we have spoken about morning routines before. Mm-hmm. We've spoken about how to find joy in every day and, the fact that no matter what's happening in the world, the sun might still be shining where you are, or the snow might be falling, or your cat might walk past and do something really weird and funny. And you know what? There's going to be something in every day that you can find some joy in. Mm-hmm. But particularly how you start the day is so important because that's where your set vibrational level works from the first 10 minutes that you're doing in the day. Mm-hmm. Now, some people, it might be making a cup of coffee. For some people, it might be, just sitting outside and having a drink of water, or there could be anything that you can do. For me, it's often going for a walk and then coming and having a sauna, and then I have my structured water. That's pretty much my basic morning. So no matter what it is that you're doing, it doesn't have to be something fancy, but it's something to really set that initial vibrational frequency mm-hmm. for yourself. Mm-hmm. And excuse my language, no matter how shit your life is at the moment, you can find something pretty fun to get going with. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a story of this woman who, when it rains, it pours. Everything was going wrong in her life. She kept going to these guidance counselor after counselor after counselor to get advice, to figure out what to do. Nobody could come up with any solutions. And finally, one of them just asked, is there anything you like doing at all? Anything at all? And she said, I like riding my bicycle. I live in an area where there's nature and I can feel the breeze and I can hear the birds. So the counselor said, okay, good. All I want you to do is ride your bicycle every single day. This woman comes back 2 weeks later, completely different person with solutions to all of her challenges. One thing, one change. She started doing a little bit of something that she likes doing. The one thing that she could figure out. This is what I was getting to also. We're talking about changing the frequency. One of the stories in my book is Maureen Bell's. She was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and given 4 to 6 weeks to live. Just as the doctors predicted, she was on her deathbed. 85 pounds, morphine patches, oxygen tubes, unable to get up or eat. Her son comes to visit to say his goodbyes, thinking she's going to die any moment. But he asks her, why didn't you fight? Why didn't you fight? She's kind of sitting there going, oh, do I have a choice? That was the first shift for her. There's a lot more to the story than that. But the next thing she did, which is even more profound, she had one more round of chemo. And this was the first time in a while that she didn't feel pain and felt hungry. But she thought, okay, I'm going to look at what's in the chemo drugs. Because she hadn't done that to the level of detail. She opens up the first one. It's called Vincastrine, made from the vinca plant. I don't know if any of you know what that is. It's periwinkle. That was her favorite plant. She planted everywhere she lived in her adult life. So now she has a different relationship with the chemo drug. And when in the past, it would take 9 to 10 hours for all of the drugs to get into her system, this time it only took 3. In the past, her urine would turn blood red. This time it stayed its normal color. The nurses called the doctors and they said, her hair is growing back in and she's gaining weight. Are you giving her a placebo? The doctor said, no way, not in her situation. So here's the deal. I was teaching yoga teacher training in a small town in Mexico where they only spoke Spanish for a month. And I told them what my food allergies were. That's not something like, that like barely is even a word in Spanish. Like it's not something culturally that they really paid attention to or knew much about. So even though my Spanish was good enough to say no milk and dairy, that's mostly what they fed me. And I'm like, look, I'm being hosted by these people. It's not a wealthy town. They're putting all this heart and energy. I'm just going to take it and appreciate what they're giving me. And I would take my hands around the food as if I could change the vibration of the food. Here's the key. And all I need to do is put some energy, good energy, some joy, some love into it. But I'm basically sending the vibration of my own body frequency into the food so that the food can then respond well with my body. And lo and behold, I was glowing the trip, like glowing in a good way. Not glowing because I was sweating and all sick from the food, but glowing in a good way. I was fine. I was totally fine for a month of eating food I was allergic to because I really put that focus in shifting the vibrational frequency of what I was putting into my body and appreciating the gift that they were giving me.
I love that. Now, we talk wealth here on this podcast. And when we're talking wealth, we're not just saying about the financial, but the personal and the emotional wealth. So what would be your top 3 tips to creating wealth?
Okay, this is fun. I'll probably give some esoteric and some practical ones. But the first thing that I'm honestly going to say is have patience and experiment. Because sometimes it's just a matter of finding the right thing in the right timing. There's something that we need to learn in life. We're here for these reasons. We don't know exactly what we intended to learn. Like when we've fully got the lessons that we need to learn, it's kind of like when you're pulling a nail out of wood, if you didn't put it in there, you don't know how big the screw is, like how deep it is and how long it's going to take to get that nail or screw out. And so you just have to keep going and keep trying different things and exploring new ways to do it. Follow what you are passionate about. We're going to get to a very practical level, which is break this down simply. If you have a specific goal for wealth, get really specific of what it is you want, how much it will cost, how much your life costs, and then specifically what you need to do in order to achieve that. So very simply, okay, I need, I want to make $10,000 in the next month. And every client who signs up for me pays $1,000. So then I need 10 clients. That's the first thing. The next thing is, well, it takes 5 conversations to get 1 client. So 5 times 10. So I have to have 50 conversations this month in order. So there's a very practical way you break this down. But now we're going to go back to the esoteric side. Remember that money, that wealth is energy, because you're saying wealth is more than just the money factor. And so it's like the idea of abundance. And there's so many things that we can say about this and shifting our relationship with energy, creating energy flow. But start to notice all the areas of your life where you already have abundant flow, where you already have lots of movement. What are the skills and talents that you're doing in that area? What's your relationship with the things in that area? And then how do you apply that wisdom, that relationship to the area where you would like to have more flow? So the interesting thing is we often already have all the answers that we need. We just have to realize that we need to apply them across platform of different areas of our life.
Fantastic. I completely agree. Such a great answer. Now, we do talk about weight loss on this podcast, and I guess weight is something that many of us battle quite needlessly. And we know that a major contributor to any drastic weight loss or drastic weight gain can be stress. And many people just don't know how to harness stress, and the fact that not all stress is bad, that we have eustress, which can actually help us stabilize our weight. So how would you, first of all, have you ever battled with your weight? And if so, what did you do? And I guess secondly, for the listeners to learn from you, how would you handle a weight issue and particularly the stress behind it?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And I'm putting together an event called Valentine's Soiree, which is a charity event for No Kid Hungry. And we have many neat things. One of them is a fashion show. And the sponsors are getting outfits designed and going to walk the runway. And the first thing that the sponsors say is, oh my God, I got to lose weight. Well, you can't, because first of all, we need to take your measurements now. And then if you lose weight, the outfits will not fit. But second of all, that can be a form of not loving your body, because none of these women who are saying this are overweight to the point where I believe that they're unhealthy. Right? So we're talking about health and weight. They're often different things and in different categories. And I think it really touched me because you're asking, what's your personal story, with this as well? I think I've always been like extra careful about my weight. I wasn't a skinny mini growing up. I was slim. I wasn't a skinny mini like other girls. And I have a little bit of shape in certain areas of my body. I also developed muscles. If you see a lot of ballerinas on stage, they're very, very strong, but they don't look that big. The way that their bodies develop muscles, they're not that big. So I have at times even been asked if I'm a bodybuilder. Not true. But so I have all those things. And in the last few years, and there's probably connected more with age and also digestive issues, been battling that a little bit more, and to no extreme extent, but enough that somebody who just cares a lot about the way she looks and notices how different it is to dance with a little bit more weight on my body. I've had to learn to love my body and say, look, I'm doing my best. I'm doing what's healthy. This is what's important. I believe that I'm doing what's healthy, and I'm exploring other alternatives. I've been reading books about what do women in my age, how should we be eating? So adapting my diet accordingly as well. Looking into the digestive issues, and but we have to love ourselves, because that's another layer of stress if we don't. And I remember at one point, because I was on this cleanse where I lost a lot of weight fast. And then I was like, I kind of missed that weight. I had all this curve. I gained more appreciation for it as well once it went away. So have appreciation in the moment while it's there. But I really want, because the sponsors are all different sizes, shapes, and ages. And we often say it's what's inside that counts. And I think we say that because we're trying to imply that somebody's not as beautiful on the outside. So let's change our perception of what beauty is. Over time, if you watch literal pictures of the key models at different time periods in photographs, in paintings, every single time period, it is a different body shape. But every single time period, all of the body shapes exist. So why do we torture ourselves and only covet one type instead of coveting all types? Covet who you are right now. So these are a lot of the tips on how to handle this, but I'm going to say another secret. Men and women are concerned about their weight in different ways, but this is something that I've heard from men. So this is the message for women. There's a different body type for every man. So if you're concerned about trying to look a certain way for a guy, guess what? There's lots of guys out there who love your body type right now. So you do not need to change it for a guy. I wanted to throw that in there.
I love that. That's so true.
Yeah. But I think, when it comes to the perception of the mind, we're talking about joy. We're talking about raising our energy. When we shift the patterning of how our mind thinks, we're also more naturally going to be loving ourselves more and more. But I would focus more on the health of your body, or if there's a specific reason, like I mentioned, it's a little harder to do certain things in dance with the subtlety of having a little bit more weight in my body in certain areas. And I appreciate being able to do those tasks, and it looks better on stage. It's just more exciting. My back hurts a little bit more when I have a little bit more weight. So I would rather not have back pain. And that's a health reason as well.
I definitely agree. And, it's really, listeners, about how you feel within your body. So many people can look at you and go, well, you're too big to do this or too big to do that, and make a judgment on what you can do. Mm-hmm. But how do you feel? And are you able to do the things that you want to do every day? And if you can, then you don't have a weight issue. Mm-hmm. You have a people issue. The people around you are the issue.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I'll say this from an example from a different way, because we've been talking about my book, Healing Happens. And what a lot of people don't know, because this book hit bestseller on Amazon before it launched, and it won 4 awards. What people don't know is that I was held back for my writing skills in school growing up. I had to have a special tutor. I was told a number of times that I couldn't write. Well, I did it. Why? So when I first felt like I had a message to share, that was a block. Well, I'm told I don't know how to write, but what did I do right away? I said, okay, well, I'll just go learn how to write. I went to one class, and the teacher said, if you feel the compulsion to write, to share a message, it must mean that at least one person out there wants that message. So you have to do it. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't take any more writing classes. I just started a blog after that. And then eventually I wrote a book. Follow your impulse. Follow your desire. Don't worry about the how. Don't worry about if you're good enough or not. Allow those things to line up. If you need more training, if you need more support. I mean, I had a great editor. I didn't do that by myself. So you don't even have to have all of the skills and talents on your own necessarily.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Now, I've got so many social networking links here for you. So listeners, bear with me, because I really do want you to connect with Avital. You can find her on LinkedIn at Avital Miller, on Facebook at Avital Miller 5. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's like the .5 or something. I can't imagine there's 4 other Avital Millers.
On Twitter at Avital Miller, and on Instagram at Avital Love. Now, we love freebies here. So what can you offer the listeners to get them going on their journey of self-discovery and to get their healing happening?
Yeah, this is perfect because we've been talking so much about raising our energy. What I would love to offer is a complimentary webinar called Energize Your Life, 3 Keys to Unlock Unlimited Energy. And I want you to keep in mind that when you learn how to have more energy, that's what's going to give you more joy and more of the impulse and motivation to do more of what you love. It creates more efficiency and productivity at work. So what I'm doing is focusing on 3 tips where you can instantaneously shift your energy and do it naturally. So if at any moment you're on the way to work and you have to walk straight into a meeting and you're not feeling that well, like what could you do safely while you're driving your car? So this is the key to give you more of that empowerment, as well as to designing your life and the way that you want it. Go to unlockunlimitedenergy.com.
That's unlockunlimitedenergy.com for that fantastic freebie.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for joining me. I know I can talk to you for hours. And listeners, look, I have a confession. We've actually recorded this podcast before, and for some reason it didn't record. So we've been chasing each other on emails and all sorts of things. And finally you get to hear this amazing lady. But I've been really lucky to already hear her. So
yeah. Thank you so much for having me on here. It was a pleasure.
Oh, thank you. Now, folks, healing does happen, and Avital is an amazing speaker, an amazing educator, and just an amazing person. So please do jump onto that freebie. We will put all the links in the show notes. And for now, listeners, before I send you off, actually, let me tell you what's coming up. Obviously, we're talking more about frequencies in our next episode. So that's coming up in 86. In 87, we're talking about your relationship with you. And in 89, something very close to my heart, how do you help an animal in need? Now, that might sound like it might put you off. You might not feel like an animal person, but we talk a lot in this podcast about appreciating the things around you. And so we're going to just cover a little bit off on that. Coming up, we have the amazing Dr. Stuart Gillespie talking all things innate immunity. Listeners, for now, go forth and create your magical life. Thanks for listening today. Please subscribe to hear future episodes, leave a review, and share this podcast. You can follow us on Facebook at A Magical Life Podcast or at Holistic Natural Health Australia. That's holistic with a W. You can find us on Instagram at Holistic Natural Health or at www.holisticnaturalhealth.com.au. That's where you'll access all sorts of articles, freebies, and more.